And now I'll switch to English. When we started planning this conference, and because it was the anniversary of the Swedish Daisy Consortium, my first thought was, we must get Stephen King here. Stephen King is the president of the Daisy Consortium, and we thought this would be a great time for him to come to Stockholm and join us in our celebration. And we made it. Stephen is here today, and it's an honor for me to welcome you. Your topic is about solving the book famine and a new copyright treaty. And I'm really looking forward to your speech, Stephen. Welcome.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning.
Good morning. Svenska Daisy Consortium. It's fantastic to be back here in Sweden, where it all started for me as one of the founding members of the Daisy Consortium, with Kjell here sitting in the front, and Inga Beckman-Freshfeld, who was the originator of the original consortium agreement, and in fact it was great to meet her last night at a dinner. So I'm really proud to be here, and I think you should be very proud that Sweden was the start, the originator of the Daisy Consortium, along with like-minded colleagues in the UK at RNID, where I was, in Spain, in Japan, Switzerland, and the Netherlands. And our first president was Inga, and we were led by some fantastic visionaries. Lars Sonnebo, who I haven't seen for a while now, and Michelle Hansen were people who really helped us grasp that vision of a better way to read for people with print disabilities. And now a fantastic Swedish person, Marcus Gilling, is our Chief Technology Officer and is helping us change the world. You have been a fantastic support to that global energy of cooperation. I think this is in the DNA of people in Sweden that I've met anyway, and the rights of people with disabilities. And I think you can be very proud of what you're achieving, because together we are solving the book famine, and that's some really great news that I want to talk to you about. And we're making fantastic progress, and I want to tell you about that. But I do want to say there's a heck of a lot more still to do. So we need to keep going, but it is fantastic progress. So what I'm going to talk about is, I don't really need to remind you about the book of Curriculum Famine, but I'm just going to remind you of the facts, and then remind you about the World Blind Union, who have led the Right to Read advocacy campaign right across the world to end the book famine. Then I'm going to talk about the Copyright Treaty, which is a great milestone in our journey, and then talk about that progress to end the book famine, and tell you just about the update of the strategy that the Global Daisy Consortium has agreed, and what our next steps are, and crucially, how you can help, because each one of us in this room can contribute and make a difference. So, you know, I do have to apologise, I've got a terrible cough, and I'm just hoping that it doesn't reappear in the middle of this. Right. I'm being told and indicated that I haven't turned on my microphone. I hope.
Is that working now? Yeah. Right. Well, I do have a loud voice anyway, but I hope it works. Fantastic. Thank you. And if there's anything else, just stop me. If anybody wants to stop me and ask a question, please do, and I will try and leave some time for some questions at the end. But don't hesitate to just ask if you don't understand, because I do appreciate I'm talking in English, and most of you, this is a second language for you, but I'm massively impressed by the quality of the English that I have met with most Swedish people. So since Caxton, and when I was in China, I had to change this slide because they invented printing about 4,000 years before we did. But since Caxton, people with a print disability have been denied access to culture and learning and the curriculum. And we have tried to solve that problem with libraries for the blind, in particular for people who want to read with their eyes in larger print, with their ears through speech synthesis or through a human narrated voice, or with their fingers through Braille. And that's been the model that we have been using for many, many decades and possibly hundreds of years. But what we do know is that we can't keep up. The explosion in publishing, I can't now remember the most up-to-date statistics, but in the UK, there was over 200,000 new publications registered just in 1 year. And even our most productive libraries in the world are getting nowhere near those sorts of figures in all the different formats that people want to read. And we know that making Braille, talking books and large print is expensive. However much volunteer time, however much we improve technology, it's not a cheap business. And the net result has been, in some of the best countries, and forgive me, I haven't checked the figures here, but across the world, there are very few countries who are achieving anywhere near 5%, which is the sort of the best measure of books available in accessible formats. So Braille, talking books, larger print. So that's the sort of very best performance. And in developing countries, the situation is just far worse than that. There isn't even the basic infrastructure. There are highly unlikely to be libraries for the blind. There is a national library service, but often they don't have any books. And we've been working on a project in Namibia quite recently, and it was really shocking to see. And Namibia is quite a well-developed country in the developing country world. It has got a national library. It's not in a bad place, but it was really shocking to discover how little there was for people with a print disability. So that meant, so this has been bubbling around for a while, but in about 2000, the World Blind Union set up the Right to Read campaign. They said, look, this has been going on for hundreds of years. We need to do something about it, and now is the time to change the world. And we realised that it was time. And so their campaigns, their slogans and campaigns were less than 5% of books are available. It's a book famine, and we want the same right to read the same book at the same time, price and place as everybody else. So those are the elements of their campaign. So this is the World Blind Union, the organisations of blind people in particular, saying this is a fundamental human right. And they set out a campaign which broadly had three elements. I don't think it was ever officially set up like this, but once you look at it, it has three elements. First of all, it was about prioritisation and money. We need to make sure that governments devote more money to libraries for the blind and solving the problem. The second one was copyright. We recognised that the copyright laws were holding back, at least delaying, the production of Braille, talking books and larger print in some countries. Some countries had already solved this, but many countries they hadn't. And the second thing was that if we had produced a copy of a book in one country, it wasn't able to be provided in another country, despite because of copyright problems, or at least in my view, interpretation of copyright. Because having worked in the publishing industry half my life, I actually think it was perfectly possible. But unfortunately, other lawyers thought differently to me. And then the other thought was, can we change reading and publishing technology? Because we saw how publishing was changing. So those are the three elements: money, copyright, and reading and publishing technology. So we had national campaigns for more money, the global, WIPO, the World Intellectual Property Organization, which is a UN organization, and it's part of the World Trade Organization, and it looks after copyright, patents, and other things. Massive organization based in Geneva. And they were reasonably helpful, and in fact very helpful in helping us identify what needed to change. A third element was developing the reading and publishing technology, and that leading to the promotion of a new model of inclusive publishing. And I'll talk about what do we mean by inclusive publishing, because I think at the time we didn't really understand what it meant. But actually now, at the end of this, I really do want to tell you about what our vision of inclusive publishing looks like and how you can help make that real. So we brought together a partnership to end the book famine. And a lot of different organisations came together. Clearly, the Regions of the World Blind Union, and here in Europe, it's the European Blind Union. The International Federation of Library Associations, IFLA, the Daisy Consortium, which by then existed and was beginning to solve the problem of reading, but it hadn't really thought very much about some of the other big problems. The World Intellectual Property Organization, the International Publishers Association, IFRO, which is an international organization of rights holders, and I've put on there IDPF. Actually, at that time, IDPF didn't exist, but it became more important later on. So those three, the money, the copyright, and the inclusive publishing, were the three elements that started to run. So some campaigns had more successes than others. So the advocacy campaign for more money and more priority, I'm using money as a shorthand for priority, had one massive success. It was part of a bigger picture, which is the UN Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities. And that was a fantastic piece of groundwork for us. And when you look inside that, you will see that there's very specific pieces about access to information as a human right. And it's quite elaborated in there in terms of access to information. That has been enormously helpful when we've been dealing with the UN organisations, the World Intellectual Property Organisation. It's a UN body, and so because there is a UN convention and there are conferred rights, it means it gives the power of people like WIPO to help us implement those and make them real. So that was a really important breakthrough. And it was part of something else, but it was really important. At the regional level, in the EU, we got lots of research money to help solve problems, but the legislative programme really hasn't had much traction. So there is an Accessibility Act. It's been in and around the European Parliament and Commission forever. It's still stuck as far as I know, and people are still arguing. It's been going on for about 10 years. It is a disgrace. But I think eventually we will get that legislation. And then, I've just picked some random things, but in Canada, I was talking to some colleagues recently. They have at last persuaded their government to fund library services. Like you have here in Sweden, fantastic funding from your government. In Canada, it was based on library services for people with a print disability were based on charitable funding. From next April, it will be based on government funding in Canada, which is great. And you have here in Scandinavia, the prioritisation for this has been continued and maintained, and from my observation, has grown. You might have other ideas, but you are a beacon of great practice here. And in India, we've been making great progress. Their government, we've got a new Copyright Act. They're beginning to start to think about how they can build an infrastructure. So we've got some good legislation in place in India and actually some quite good new practice coming up. So we are making progress, and I've got a couple of slides here in the UK where I was based at the time, and we had a great campaign. So there's a picture here of some children outside our UK Parliament. Where's my book? It was really great. We got TV and lots of exposure to MPs. It just raised the temperature. It was fantastic. And there's a picture here in the US of similar demonstrations organised by the National Federation of the Blind. And I'm sure there were lots of others across the world. I've just picked those two photographs. So that brings me then to the copyright campaign. You remember one of the different elements of his campaign. So that was money. So that was okay, but the big breakthrough was the UN Convention. So now turning to the copyright campaign, that was the slogan of that was based on people. If a book is available somewhere in a format I can read, then I can get hold of it easily and quickly. And that's what we want to achieve. So if I'm in Namibia and I'm studying engineering and Swedish, I can get the books if they're available in Braille or large print or e-book or whatever it is that I want. So that's our simple goal. So if you're here in Sweden and you're studying French, you could get access to that huge library of French culture, which is held by Aviash. So you may well have, and I know that MTM here in Sweden have a brilliant collection of cultural materials and educational materials from right across the world. I think you have the very best sort of multicultural collection. But I know, I don't even have to check the numbers to know that it's only a fraction of what actually is out there available in the world. So that's the goal. And one of the barriers is the copyright barrier. And we went out there saying it isn't the only barrier, but it is really important. And particularly organisations which are government organisations. So I used the Library of Congress in the US. The Library of Congress in the US is a government-funded organisation which does fantastic work in talking books and Braille and other things. Great collections. But they said, no, we can't. We can only serve US citizens and we can't serve people outside our borders. And that caused all sorts of problems and was one, is a great example for us to use when we were saying we need to solve this problem. So the World Blind Union's challenge to us all was we need to share these expensive, accessible formats. We accept that producing Braille and producing talking books and others is an expensive business, but we need to share those across the world so we can get more copies. And the great example I use, being a British person and having come from British publishing, is the Harry Potter books. And it's a well-known story. I'm sure you know it. But the most recent Harry Potter book, when it was published in English, was produced in Braille and talking books 7 different times. It was produced in the UK, it was produced in Canada, it was produced in the US, it was produced in New Zealand, it was produced in Australia, and it was produced in Nigeria. It was ridiculous, and probably a few more times as well. It was ridiculous because 6 of those we could have used those resources to do other things. So a complete waste of time and resources if we could organise ourselves globally. Lots of other big problems. Those of you who know that there are 3 different flavours of English Braille in the world. Well, that's a bit of a problem. Well, actually, we solved that. We've got final agreement to unified English Braille. It's being implemented. I thought it would never, ever happen. But fantastic people out there, visionaries, have gone out and made the political case. And we have one version of English Braille, and that's being implemented right now. So I am really, really hopeful that we can get to that stage where only one copy of Harry Potter in English Braille will be produced in the future, and we can use those resources to do other fantastic books. So the World Blind Union's challenge to us is, come on guys, get your act together. Can we just produce one at a time? And then when I came into this industry in 1990, gosh, that's a long time ago, isn't it? In 1990, I came to some meetings of the IFLA, International Federation of Library Associations. It has a section on libraries for the blind. Who's been to a meeting of the section of libraries for the blind? I can see one hand, two hands, three hands. So IFLA is a fantastic organisation. It runs meetings across the world, and in there has been the section of libraries for the blind. It's now called Section of Libraries for People with Print Disabilities, I think. They organised meetings, and they had been talking about a world library, or at least a world catalogue of accessible format materials, long before I turned up in 1990. But the problem was it was all talk and no action, and we hadn't come up with the resources or the political will to make that happen. And World Blind Union says, come on guys, you need to make this happen. So that's their challenge to us. So it's a very long story to the copyright treaty success in Morocco. And I will only tell you two stories about the copyright treaty. One was there's a very able blind man called David Mann, who's a good friend of mine, and he had knocked on the door and worked out how we could get into the World Intellectual Property Organisation, massive organisation, 160 countries, each with their table with 4 chairs on it and their nameplate on, and we had negotiated patiently, and it had taken about 3 years, and David had done all the hard work to get the World Blind Union. We had got 1 seat, and we had been told in this massive meeting we had 1 minute. And that was great, and I was really proud to be there when David stood up and made our peace, and that was good. And then we were invited to a meeting of the Director General. This must have been somewhere in the early 2000s, and we went upstairs, and I had my bag with me, and the Director General was an American lady, and she had some beautiful figurines and some lovely pieces of sculpture in her room, and we were just making pleasantries, and as I turned around, my bag hit one of these figurines, and it fell on the floor and smashed into millions of pieces. And I thought, well, that's the end of that. But despite my best efforts to ruin the whole project, the World Blind Union leadership took this on, and the result was, and I was really proud to be there. I've got one picture on the left of the various leaders from the World Blind Union across the world, the chair of the African Blind Union, Marianne Diamond, who was the president of the World Blind Union and led this, Fred Schroeder, who's from the North American Blind Union in Morocco. And we corralled 160 countries for a diplomatic conference, which went on for 5 days. And the argument went right on to past midnight on the last day, when they had to make the agreement before we reached final agreement. But it was fantastic, and Stevie Wonder came and he did a concert for everybody at the end. So that was great, and it really is a fantastic milestone. But it is just a milestone. It's only a step on the way. We've got a huge amount still to do. The treaty was signed. I checked the day before yesterday when I was on my computer, and it had moved to 61 countries have signed the treaty. So China, Chile, USA, UK, Korea, Switzerland and Denmark. I couldn't find Sweden. You need to chivvy your government up The European Union have said that they will sign, but they haven't signed. You need to chivvy them up. We need to get them to sign it. That's the first stage. Then the next stage is what's called ratification, because then each country has to look at its copyright laws and see whether it's compliant with that treaty. They then have to adjust their copyright law and put it through their national parliaments and get that agreed, and then they can ratify the agreement. So we have to get 200 countries to do that. So come on, Sweden, so the first job you have to do is to talk to your members of parliament and your representatives and make that happen. So, and that leads to ratification. We have to get, I think it's 26 countries to ratify, and when 26 countries have ratified, it comes into sort of international law. That treaty has force. So at the moment, we've got 62 countries who've said they want it to happen, but it hasn't actually happened. So we have to make those next steps, please. So that's your first job, okay? And that's my challenge to everybody in every country. And the World Blind Union in particular is going to be, that's its focus over this next 5 years, is supporting the organisations of the blind and to help that political process. But it needs citizens to say, come on, make this a priority. There are lots of other things to do, but we've put lots of effort into that. So what does the Marrakesh Treaty mean? Which, and I can only say this, it will only mean this after that ratification process. So I think we're going to get the results in about 5 years' time, at best. It doesn't solve the book famine on its own. What it does is an enhanced accessibility book. So I'll talk about what I mean by that, but what I mean by that is Braille, a talking book, some diagrams. So something that has been enhanced for accessibility, produced using a copyright exception. So do we know what a copyright exception is? So that means you can get on without having to ask for a license or permission of the publisher. You can produce a Braille or talking book or other. So most legislation, and I know you have it here in Sweden, you have a copyright exception. If it's produced under a copyright exception in one country, then it can be supplied, if there is legislation, with a copyright exception in another country. So we have to get legislation in every country, all 200 countries of the world, which have copyright exceptions. So it can be supplied to a user, so that's an individual person with a print disability, or what's called an authorised entity, which might be a library, it might be a school, it might be a university library, it might be a university itself. It's up to governments to decide what authorised entities are, and you can do that. So it's either business to business, library to library, or library to individual. It can be either of those. So that's the heart of the treaty, and that's what has been its long and patient negotiation has delivered. And for me, what that means, it enables that global marketplace for accessible format materials, for Braille and talking books. And that means that we can move to a place where we only produce one Harry Potter. But we still need the business arrangements. Why would MTM produce a book and lend it to somebody in India? It's not their responsibility. It's not their funding doesn't cover that. You've got other things to do for people with a print disability here in Sweden. So what's the arrangement? How will that work? We have to come up with a sensible business arrangement to make that work. So how does the treaty help people here in Sweden with a print disability? Well, our aim is to change it to what I want to read. I can read what I want. If I want to read Spanish, if I want to read Swahili, you know, there's 100 million people in the world speak Swahili. There's a fantastic collection of stuff at ABC in Kenya. But, you know, you probably haven't got very much of that here in Sweden. I think even you're challenged to get that. Well, you can. That's our globe. So moving from what I want to read from, well, what's available. I'll look in the catalogue and see what's available and choose from that. So that's the big push that we're trying to achieve. So enables that sort of access to global culture and learning. It supports people from ethnic minorities and cultural minorities to read in their own language. Certainly in the UK, we're a global melting pot of something in the region of 200 languages are being spoken in London as we speak, but loads of people speaking Hindi and Urdu. We've got loads of Polish people speaking in my town where I live at the moment. So how can we support people and their families reading in their own language, and in particular studying in their own in the languages of the world? When I studied chemistry, God, I don't know what happened. I studied chemistry, but I was told when I was studying chemistry that if I really wanted to study, I had to learn German, because some of the most fantastic chemistry, materials were only available in German. That was in a long time ago. So we need to support people who are studying and need access to other languages. It also supports global economic development. It has been fantastic for me. I've been travelling the world for over 40 years now, and to see the progress in Africa, see the progress in the Indian subcontinent, see the progress in South Asia, and that really changes things, and it changes it for all of us. Why is it that consumer goods are so cheap now? They used not to be. It's because of economic development across the globe. So it is in our global interest to make that happen. We get better, richer libraries, and which are more cost-effective. It means that government spending on libraries is better, and people with print disabilities are better equipped for our globalised world. But the Marrakesh Treaty is just the start. There is much more to do. So, no, it doesn't end the book famine. We need to carry on with those other projects, the money and resources. We need a treaty implemented in 200 countries. We need to develop reading and publishing technology, and we need to promote the new model of inclusive publishing. So let's look at the progress on reading and publishing technology. Now, some of you will know about that, and the e-book revolution, the growth of mobile devices, the speech synthesizer revolution. I think there's been work here on some much better speech synthesizers for Swedish and Danish and some of the other languages. And I think you may know about the low-cost Braille display project, which we're working on at the moment to bring down the cost of Braille displays enormously. So when I was in Finland, in Helsinki in June 2012, I said people with print disabilities are increasingly able to enjoy the same book at the same price, the same place as everybody else, but there's more to do. And that was just over a year ago, 18 months ago. And you will have heard from Richard Orme yesterday some of the details of that. E-books are transforming access in the English language. It is just amazing. And more people can benefit now. And for people with low vision who used to read large print books, big, heavy, large print books, a nice, light e-book reader is transforming. My wife's uncle, who is in his 90s now and bedridden, he only has one arm. He just loves reading on his e-book. He reads his farming magazines, he reads his books. It's nice and light, it's big print, and he can turn the pages with his one hand. It's fantastic. And if you're reading with your ears or you're reading with touch, it's still a bit of a pain. But if you've experienced a famine, mouldy bread tastes fantastic. And people, once they get hold of ebooks and work out how to make it operate for them, people are really enjoying. So we need a better reading experience, but let's not take away from the transformation that's happening right before our ears. And I'm sure Richard told you yesterday about the research that RNIB did, and it was published in June or July of this year, which broadly said that of the top 1,000 selling books in the UK in 2012, 84% were readable on the day of publication with your eyes, ears or fingers, if you knew how to do it. And of the top 1,000 fiction books, 99% were available to read. So we've transformed fiction. And I've just got a picture here of the latest Kindle Fire. Kindle is one of the many ebook providers. It now has built in lots of services for blind people and people with low vision. So the companies are beginning to take this market on and make it work. So great progress, but no one delivers great navigation. That whole navigation system that is for people who've been brought up with Daisy, invented here, navigating through phrases and through things. We haven't been able to deliver that yet. So novel reading is okay, and it's great in English, but we've got loads of work to do in the many other languages of the world. And we've got problems of speech synthesis. There is no Tamil speech synthesizer, for example. We've got, some big tasks to do. So lots of problems and more to do. So now I want to talk to you about inclusive publishing and promoting the new model of inclusive publishing, because this is your next task. This is what I want you to talk about and start to think about how you can make this happen in Sweden. So the Daisy Consortium members are leading this aspect. We're supported by the World Blind Union, IFLA, International Publishers Association and WIPO and others. And we've got a proud heritage of improving reading. We've transformed talking books with Daisy Talking Books, and we're transforming ebooks. But we now want to help the global publishing industry change itself. And we need to create that network, which is in the WIPO Treaty, of what's called authorised entities. And we need to help them integrate and change. So publishing is a global business, and the Daisy Consortium that you invented is a global organisation. And our mission is that and we have updated our mission, so I'm telling you this, this is about about a year since we finally agreed our new mission and vision. So people have equal access to information and knowledge regardless of disabilities. And our mission is to create the best way to read and publish for everybody in the 21st century. So that's everybody, not just people with print disabilities, but for everybody. We want to take that fantastic knowledge we've done for people with disabilities and give that to everybody, our gift to the world. We're going to do that by delivering partnerships that build that more effective solution for everybody. So we're all organisations committed to that common vision and mission, and we want to coordinate our resources. So that's the job of the consortium, is to coordinate all of this, to orchestrate it, to conduct the orchestra, and to make that change happen. And we've got a whole range of global partnerships, and I'm not going to read out all the different organisations because I want to press on. And we've got Daisy Consortium now members in every country and every continent bar Antarctica. My only joke is, and somebody said that they've stolen my only joke. I only have one joke, which is that we don't yet have a member in Antarctica because penguins don't read, as far as I know. And that's my only joke. But anyway, so we've got members right across the globe now, and our goal is confident readers reading what they want with their eyes, ears and fingers. That's the goal. So our vision of reading, how do we see reading in the 21st century? Well, we see that actually the e-book is the key to reading, particularly for a person with a print disability. And you use a low-cost device, the common device that we're all carry around with you. I see lots of iPhones and smartphones and tablets being pointed and people taking pictures now. Most people are carrying a phone these days. Most of them are smart. Even when I've been in Africa a couple of times over the last couple of years, and smartphones are all over there. You know, people might not have shoes, but they sure have a phone. So that's the route through which we can deliver access to information. For that, we need local language speech synthesis and screen readers. We need low-cost a Braille display, and we've got a big project called Transforming Braille, which is, I think, making good progress. We need cheap tablets. In India, there's a big program, one tablet per child. You know, we're working on that to make sure that it's got all the technology it needs. And we know that for people who are heavy users, people who are blind, who are studying, they're going to need some specialist devices. We need them, and so all of that integrates to support reading ebooks in a way that works. But we do also know that, at least for the foreseeable future, it's not going to be easy or reasonable for publishers to have every access feature. We don't, frankly, know how we're going to deal with maths. We don't know how we're going to deal with pictures, you know, in any sort of automated way. Diagrams, there's lots of things that as producers of enhanced material, we're going to have to intervene and add. So we want to push onto the original publisher as much accessibility as possible, but our job as the enhancers is to tackle those things that it's not reasonable for publishers to do. So diagrams, maths, foreign languages, really complicated books, that's going to be the Libraries for the Blind task. We want to be able to produce Braille quickly and simply and easily from the ebook, and I think that there's some big projects going on there, and I think that will happen. We need that global library of access enhanced materials, and there's something called the Tiger Project, which has been making steady progress, and I saw that when I was in Geneva the other day. Really impressive. Much more to do, but I think we're on the way, and that's the key to making access enhanced materials worldwide. So that's our sort of vision. So let's look at that from the consumer point of view. So I'm a person with a print disability here in Sweden. So first of all, what I want to be able to do is, you know, I'm studying engineering, and I need this particular book. I can discover the access features. Can I read it? You know, can I use a Braille display on this? So I need to be able to see the access features. Now, currently, I know there are are there any librarians in the room? We've got any librarians? Do we know about metadata? Do we know about cataloguing and metadata? So, well, the publishing industry does have really good metadata. It's fantastic. But one of the things it doesn't really, it's not very good at, is saying whether, you know, how accessible, what the accessibility features are. We need to work with the publishing industry so they say, well, here are the things that are in this publication, but here are the things that are not. So I can work out whether I can just buy it and read it, or whether I need to go to an organisation to get it enhanced for me. So I can find that out either from the bookshop or from the library, or from the internet through some of the, you know, Amazon and these type of internet, or from a Tiger catalogue. But most of the books I want to read, most of the novels, have got those the access features I need. That's our goal. And I get the book from the same shop or library as my friends. So I can read it on my phone or tablet or specialised device with my choice of eyes, ears or fingers. But some of the books I need enhanced access features. I need the diagrams. You know, there's lots of pictures in this, and I'm not quite sure what they are, and I need somebody to tell me what they mean. So I can discover those in the Tiger catalogue. It may have a different name. I think one of the decisions we've made is we're going to change its name. So there's a global catalogue which will enable me to discover what's available and where it is in the world, and then easily to be able to order it and get it delivered to me. through my university or library or school or whatever it is that I use. So that's what inclusive publishing looks like for us, and that's what we're talking about, and that's what we're talking to the publishing industry about. So that new model of inclusive publishing looked from sort of where we are is increasing numbers of ebooks have built-in accessibility. And you'll have seen that your Swedish colleague and supported by somebody from Canada, we've written for people using EPUB, which we think is the technical standard that's going to be used for most ebook publishers. We've written, what is EPUB 3? We, the Daisy Consortium, control EPUB. It is Daisy. It is fantastic. EPUB 3 is Daisy, invented here in Sweden. Fantastic. But and being adopted worldwide by all the global publishers across the world. It is a fantastic story, that. So we want more and more books with inbuilt accessibility features. I can just buy it and read it. Great. But we need to, and the key piece of that, which you as librarians can do, is we need much more work on better metadata. And then in the improved efficiency, where publications need enhanced access. So access enhanced materials. So linking libraries to the blind into the publisher workflow. We're producing tools for that, Obi and Toby, and we need to coordinate that production of those materials worldwide. So the language is starting to use, and I'd quite like you to start to use it. So inbuilt accessibility, a standard ebook, readable with my eyes, ears or fingers, to a greater or lesser degree, or the enhanced accessibility version, which has picture descriptions, compact layout, might be simplified for people with a learning disability. But broadly, we create that from the standard ebook, and we make that whole process easy. I think I have skipped a slide there. So our strategy is to help libraries for the blind improve and change and cooperate. That's the job of the Daisy Consortium. We need to continue on our work on better ways to read, so working with the technology companies who are producing ebooks to make sure that that works. Better ways to publish. We want to work with industry on inclusive publishing and developing that metadata for them. The sharing of accessible versions worldwide. The Tiger Project, the global library. Bookshare, which has emerged as a sort of global provider of accessible ebooks in particular. It's operating now in maybe 20 countries across the world. It's a sort of the Amazon of the accessibility industry. It's beginning to emerge. And there are others. There's another one called Cifra Libros in the Spanish language, working very successfully in South America. And another one in India called Inclusive Planet, which has been doing some great work in the Indian language, but also interestingly in English. So those global organisations are beginning to emerge. And crucially, we need skills and knowledge development. In the publishing industry, authors need to know about accessibility and how to include it, as do designers and publishers. We need to change our ways, and crucially, consumers need to know how to benefit from all of this. And we need to up our game on sharing those enhanced accessibility versions worldwide. The Tiger Project, I think we're going to reinvent and work on. I think there's new energy behind that. I had a fantastic meeting in Geneva. The World Blind Union were there around the table. Again, they have been absent for a while for various complicated reasons, but they were there at the table. There was lots of energy to reinvent that project and move it on, and some money and some resources. Great. I think we will see emerging. We've already got the elements of that catalogue. So the next steps, and these are things that you can do. Spread the accessibility benefits of ebooks. So Richard Orme told you about the fantastic progress that has happened in the UK, and we're trying to make sure that people are benefiting from that. You should be doing that here in Sweden and across the world. We need to bring the benefits of ebooks to Braille users, and that's the Transforming Braille project. And that's making great progress, so that you can just read an ebook using your fingers. We need worldwide adoption of the EPUB standard. I decided not to talk about EPUB because I saw on the programme lots of other people were talking about that, but we need to make sure that that's worldwide adopted. We need to implement the Copyright Treaty in 200 countries. We need to develop that global catalogue, and we need to spread the skills and knowledge right across industry, from authors to publishers to bookshops to libraries to consumers. So you can help. So please do continue your support of the Daisy Consortium. You have been fantastic friends. Please continue and re-energise yourselves to support our global work. Contribute your skills and knowledge. You already do in fantastic ways. Please continue to do that. Promote ratification of the Marrakesh Treaty with your government and with the European Union. Promote inclusive publishing. Start talking to your publishing industry. I'm sure that they will want to do so at a global level, the Publishers Association. And challenge them to more ebooks with accessibility built in, better metadata, and efficient access enhancements by integrating with your special, with MTM and others. Share your access enhanced books worldwide. We need to work out why you should and how it's going to work, and spread the knowledge of new ways to read. Together we can solve the book famine. We're on the way to do it. You started it. Please help me finish it off. Thank you very much. I think we've got about 3 minutes, and then before the next speaker, who's already here. Anybody want to ask a question?
You can ask the question in Swedish and we translate it for you.
No questions? Well, I'm here, and I'm quite approachable. Please do come and talk to me afterwards, and I'm here for the rest of the day. So, yeah, we have a question.
In Swedish.
In Swedish.
Jag vill bara säga att det här Tiger-projektet som nämns här flera gånger, som handlar om att utväxla titlar mellan länder, arbetar vi väldigt intensivt med, så att vi är involverade i det här projektet att utväxla titlar mellan andra länder, så att de inte görs på fler än ett ställe. Och det vet jag att de nordiska länderna gör också. Bara för er information, så tack.
You're working, okay, yeah. So yes, Sweden, I think, has been, I think you have supplied loads of titles to the Tiger project. It's a fantastic resource, not least because you've got some of the best resources in the world, I think.
Just 105,000 titles.
Just 105,000 titles. Just a small drop. No, you've been fantastic. Really brilliant supporters, and thank you for your continued efforts on that. We are going to make a massive difference, and the impact in developing countries is going to be enormous. Well, thank you all very much.
I thought it was very inspiring listening to you, Stephen, and we have a lot to do. We have a lot to do, but we also have a lot to gain by working together, and I'm really looking forward to what will happen with the copyrighted treaty in some years. I think that will make a huge impact for the talking book readers. So, Stephen, here is some sweets and chocolate for you. Swedish licorice.
Ooh.
If you know that,
yes.
That's very nice.
I don't know it, but I shall discover it. I love chocolate.
Oh, that's good.
Fantastic.
So, once again, thank you very much for joining us.
And thank you very much for inviting me.